Following the court order. Over a decade ago, I came home to find I was being moved out by my wife. We weren't in a great place, but I was blindsided. I was also served with a protection order that stated I could not come home without prior written permission. I had to go through my wife to see the kids, etc., and it was in effect for 90 days. I was devastated. A relative connected me with a bulldog of a lawyer. This lady was brilliant and no nonsense. She filed a rebuttal to the protection order, but told me these things take time and we were unlikely to see a judge before the 90 days were up. She was very clear that I must follow the court order to the letter. If there was any evidence otherwise, I'd be in an uphill battle when my wife renewed it. It only took one day before my now ex needed me to take the kids. I had crashed at a friend's house, so I had no place to take them. So we agreed I'd watch them at home. I waited a few blocks away while waiting for an email. Ex called me and I reminded her of the details of the order and that I wouldn't come until I had permission. This happened twice more that I waited down the street within the first week. So I told her I wouldn't leave where I was staying until I had the email. It was about 20 minutes away. I texted her to remind her. The very next day she again didn't email. We were planning on me picking up the kids to take them to school since their school was only a few minutes from my work. However, because I had not received written permission, I ran out of time to drive to pick up the kids and then make it to their school and work. She called furious that I wasn't there. I reminded her about the permission, and that I was out of time. She ended up being very late to work that day. She then wanted to write me blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it. Follow the order. The culmination of this was a few weeks later when she again forgot to send permission. Her boyfriend was staying over, but didn't have his car with him. They both had to get to work, and that was the day I learned that he was her direct supervisor. Ex had to call a friend from work to pick up kids and take them to school, and the friend found out. Of course it got out at their work. Within a week of that, the boyfriend was fired over their relationship and my ex was suspended. By this time, I had my own place, so the kids ended up staying with me most days. I later learned that the protection order was the boyfriend's idea. Ex was quite mad about it as it turned into evidence that I wasn't a threat to her or the family, and the judge was quite harsh with her over it when we settled for support and parenting time. She called it intentional and harmful parental alienation. This is the second part that was removed from Pro Revenge. I'll maybe fix it later there. This is the second half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. A decade ago my then wife, now ex-wife, began a relationship with a guy and kicked me out of my house. The boyfriend was instrumental in blindsiding me and planning on how to keep me from my own kids. Ever since, I've kinda hated him. I've always been polite and respectful with boyfriend because he'd become my kid's stepdad. But if ever I had the chance I'd get back at him. I figured it would be something petty, but then he gift-wrapped my revenge and I've been running with it for almost 3 weeks now. My kids are mostly grown now. Some in university, some in grades 11 to 12. The uni kids live with me while the high school still go back and forth with their mom. I'm also remarried now. My wife and I each have our own vehicles, but my wife owns and insures a minivan for when we all are going somewhere together. The kids are free to use it too as only one has a car. We only have one set of keys, so I put an air tag on it. It's a little transponder that tracks its location. I put it on there in case the keys were lost. About 3 weeks ago, one of my older kids took the van out for the night, but ended up staying at his mom's on the couch. Around 7 a.m. the next day, another kid asked to use the van. I pinged the air tag only to find out it was hours away in an industrial section of another town. I was quite concerned why my kid was out there. I called him up, and he was at his mom's where he said he'd be. He had no idea the van was missing. I called the police and gave them the location of the van. Within 20 minutes they had stopped the van and the driver said he had permission to use it. Lo and behold, it's my ex-wife's boyfriend. The police weren't very interested in detaining him as it would be easier for him to just drive the van back to our town and we could sort it out here. However, it wasn't my van nor was he listed on the insurance to drive it. I asked that it be impounded. In Canada we can't press charges, but I was adamant that this was theft and that I wasn't going to let it go. Since the guy was out of town with no ride, the police did end up detaining him, probably because it was easier. I was given info for the yard where the van was impounded. Since we had the next day off, My wife and I drove out to the yard to pick it up. When we got there, I first checked for damage since it was sitting a little low. Nothing outside. When I checked inside, I found that it was loaded with industrial fasteners and cable. Think seismic mitigation. Turns out boyfriend used my wife's van to pick up stuff for work. My wife turns on her heels and walks to the office. I had to jog to keep up. She asks who has access to the van. They have the only set of keys, so my wife is assured only her or me. At this point I get where she's going with this. I instruct them that no one access the van but us. I had $35 with me, so I gave it to them as a tip. They promised me that no one would get in there, and they actually moved the van into a secured area within the yard. Then we went home without the van. We weren't even home from the long drive when I got the first text from boyfriend about getting the equipment. I explained that we left the van as there were expenses we were not going to pay. Towing, impounding fees, daily storage. I told him that he'd have to pay for them before I pick up the van. He was super mad and swore he'll pay me back. I said no way. Within an hour I got a call from his boss. They need the equipment ASAP for a time-sensitive job. I explained that it was impounded and that I won't have time to get it until next week now. And it has to be paid in advance. Boss swears up and down at me. I calmly explained that I didn't steal a vehicle to transport his stuff. Boss was having none of that, so I said I won't tolerate that abuse and hung up. Then I blocked him and his company on every platform I'm reachable on. And that was 3 weeks ago. Since then I've been able to make excuses every single time boyfriend tries to arrange picking up the van. Often because the kids don't have the van, so I have to drive them. Boss has gotten through a few times using other numbers and sent a ton of emails that I ignore, but I did reply and explain that both my wife and I need about 4 hours to do the round trip and that it needs to be paid for ahead of time. And it's added up. $25 a day for secure storage plus towing and impound fees, etc. Plus I wanted to be paid for the fuel BF used as well as our travel. Boyfriend and I agreed on the standard 58 cents per kilometer, and so the bossy transferred us for the total cost of our driving. By now the van has made one trip and our car has done two. It came to almost $600. So on Friday it finally happened. My wife and I drove out and picked up the van. It was prepaid and ready to be released. I dropped off a dozen beer at the office when I picked up the keys and went to grab the van. However, I wasn't going to transport boss and boyfriend's stuff, so I arranged for it to be held at the yard at the same rate as a vehicle, unloaded it and left right before it closed for the weekend. I got a call from boyfriend asking when he can come by with a work truck to get the stuff. I told him it's still at the impound almost 2 hours away and the office opens Monday at 9. There was only silence on the other end, so I hung up after about 10 seconds. Through this I've been getting vague updates from my ex, who I've got a good relationship with now. She was livid with boyfriend and was clear with me that any and all consequences were squarely on him. He's kept his job, but is missing the next pay increase and is not getting his year-end bonus. Ex said they're way too short-staffed to let him go, but he's in the doghouse at home and at work. No word on criminal charges for taking the van, but Crown handles that, and I'm not suing in civil court. And here's the comment from our Reddit peps. First was from Necessary Pair. Thank you for posting this and for the retribution. And next is from Resident Ad 7771. So good. Fafo. He tried to pull a nasty trick on you and paid the price. And this one from Sassafrasical. Revenge is best served years later and very cold lol chef's kiss. This one is from Shadow. Dragon 8685. Very well done. You might have wrapped the ex's BF's boss's eyes over a barrel and gotten him to pay you to get his stuff back, but, A, that would be illegal, and, B, C, A. Instead, you've handled this pretty firmly above board. In a malicious way, but above board, you did not take possession of the ex-BF boss's material goods in any manner, nor exploited them in any manner for your own profit. They were lawfully impounded by the police, stored securely at the vehicle impound as they represent a very expensive commodity. When you got your van back, you refused to take possession of them as they were not your goods. Ex-BF boss will have to detail some of his own employees, and a work vehicle, to go and get them. You even arranged for the impound lot to continue to securely store them, which is gracious of you. And lastly is from Judy. Holy hell, that is nuts. Great job by you and your wife. How entertained were the yard employees? And OP replied. They thought it was hilarious. The tip and the beer made up for some of the abuse they took from the boss too. It kinda felt like they were in on it with me by then end. And that's all for today, guys. See you on the next one.